Good evening and welcome back to AATV Live with me, your host Tom Anvil Hibberd, on this Thursday. Luckily, I've got a new heater in the garden room and I'm not actually freezing for a change, which is brilliant. So, been a bit of a break over Christmas. I needed a bit of time off. I got very tired and a bit anxious, but we're back now, hopefully for a really interesting and cool episode with today's guest. As always, I'm in the garden room. There may be distractions. This is a live show, so please bear with us if anything happens. Today we're going to talk all about airsoft reviews and reviewing products in airsoft and how we like to do them. So I'm joined by a really great guest today. Let me bring him up, which is Dan from the ATRG Blog. How you doing, Dan?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Thanks for coming on. I can see we've got loads of people in the comments already. Cleaning another Dan. It's going to get very confusing. Apparently he likes Yaz, which is a singer from a very long time ago. So Dan, let's start with the perennial AATV live question, which is, what's in your cup?
It's rather boring today. It's water. I'm on a bit of a health kick, so I'm allowed a drink on Fridays, and I'm not allowed to break the rules for any reason, unfortunately. So it's just water. The other option was coffee, but I don't want to be up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I'm on Co-op's finest Leffy today, so that's annoyingly the local microbrewery has a pub and they used to do takeout sales, and due to the new regulations they can't do that, so we're kind of stuck to supermarket beer now for Leffy's. Pretty nice. Okay, Dan, so we've got loads of... Obviously, some of your viewers will be over here and they know you quite well. A lot of my viewers won't know much about you. I suspect quite a few of them have read some of your stuff. So let's talk a little bit about you. How long have you been playing? What sort of games do you take part in? And what's your kind of general background?
So I started playing Airsoft at about 1998. I was collecting Springers for a couple of years before that. And in 2006, I gave it a break for about 5 years.
Okay.
And then I came back into it. I think it was 2012 I came back into it and started playing more regularly than I was before. So, I play a mixture, to be honest. I mean, people know me for playing sort of Sterling games, milsims, themed games, but I actually quite enjoy a good old-fashioned skirmish just as well. So since 2012, full-time, really.
Okay. Awesome. What's your background outside of Airsoft? You don't have to go into massive details, but what do you do outside of Airsoft?
A really, really boring job. I get asked it any time I review something that's worth a lot of money. People go, "Oh yeah, what kind of job do you do?" And it's really boring. I work for a wholesale distributor and importer for terracotta tiles. So it's really, people always seem fascinated by what I do outside of Airsoft, and honestly, no one could be more bored of it than what I am. But it pays the bills, and I work with a great bunch of people. So, but it is very, very removed from what I usually do.
Okay, that's okay. Well, that leads us on to probably the next question we should talk about, which is why and when did you start the ATRG blog?
So I started. It's actually coming up for its 3rd anniversary in March. Ben Webb as well as I do.
Yeah.
I used to read a lot of Airsoft International stuff, and it was fantastic for a very, very long time. I was very, very into a lot of the loadout stuff that he did, things like Lone Survivor and all the rest of it, and it kind of disappeared. And I felt that there was a massive gap.
Yeah.
And also, I thought I can talk to people. One of my previous roles was in sales, so I've always liked to interact with people. A bit of an introvert, but I just felt like it would be interesting to give it a go. So I did a couple of interviews, and it just all rapidly went up from there, to be honest.
Okay, we've got a question about what does ATRG stand for?
So ATRG is something that I've shoehorned into those initials, really. If anybody is a PC gamer, you'll know about Arma 3. And there's a specific force there called CTRG, which is Combined Something Reconnaissance or Research Group. And I like the logo, and I like the camouflage that they used. In fact, Dave Tudor, I think he had a special set commissioned for him.
Wow.
So I basically adapted it a little bit, and I thought, I'll change the first word into Airsoft. And that's where it all came from. When I look back at it now and I see the words tactical, I think it's a little bit cringy. But it's been around for 3 years now, and it's too late to change. I can't be bothered, if I'm honest, and I can't find a better name.
Yeah, sometimes I quite like to change Anvil Airsoft, but it is what it is, and the logo is basically a font. So it's just it's one of those things. So for those viewers who aren't really familiar with the blog, what sort of products do you normally kind of review?
So it's quite a wide range. A lot of it is going to be what people refer to as real steel tactical kit, but there's also replicas. I'm not going to lie, 99% of what I'm going to review is going to be Tokyo Marui, but I also do review other reproduction stuff as well. I've reviewed a Emerson AVS plate carrier and other things as well. Some things are beyond my spending ability or how much I want to spend. So I will weigh it up before I buy something, whether I buy something that's a genuine article or whether it's a reproduction. So there's a bit for everybody. It's not you don't have to be absolutely loaded to maybe find something that I've written about that you could take enjoyment out of.
Yeah, we talked a bit about this in the pre-show about not necessarily getting yourself into debt to buy airsoft stuff and buying what you can afford and making sure it's worthwhile for you without getting yourself into financial trouble, which will probably come up again later on.
Actually, one of the other reasons why I started writing is because some of the things that I was looking to buy, there weren't reviews of. So I wanted to not only buy something and try it out, but also make sure that after I tried it out, that I left a lasting review that wouldn't disappear in a Facebook thread or somewhere like that. By putting it on my own platform, it means that as long as I keep paying the renewal fees on the website every year, the information's there. Actually, one of my other biggest inspirations was a blog called Mundo Airsofter. He did a loadout breakdown on Tears of the Sun many, many years ago.
I think I've read it, yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody's read it at least once.
Yeah.
And it is exceptional. And he's still going now, but I think that one is probably the most read one that he's ever done. And to a massive amount, the specific details that he went into, it just clicked. And that was the kind of style that I've kind of tried to adopt.
Okay, and you're quite well known for interjecting a bit of humour as well, because sometimes it can be a very dry subject. You're fairly infamous for dropping some bombs during your.
So, at least one or two little jokes in there. Some of them probably miss the mark, but it can be, I think, quite difficult to keep people engaged when they're reading. People are so used to visual media, YouTube and Instagram. When you ask them to click onto a link on a blog and read through, and I'm not going to lie, my blogs are generally, I use more words than I have to. I did a 6,000 word review on the TM Mark 46, and I could have made it into a 2,000 word review if I wanted to, but I kind of went into the detail because no one else had. And if I hadn't put a few jokes in there, I think people lose track. People probably want to read my stuff because it's a very personal experience. It's more conversational. I try and keep it conversational, as if I'm not just rambling and rambling and rambling.
No, I think it's a really valid thing. I mean, looking at YouTube is a funny game. You look at YouTube engagement, you've really got 8 minutes, and then you've really, really got 5 minutes to really get people. And your drop off is extremely fast in the first 30 seconds. And I don't tend to chase the algorithm because you end up going around you end up doing really stupid shit, which I don't like.
Yeah, you do, and you see it a lot, and more specifically, I think you see that kind of chasing the likes and chasing the figures behavior when you look at gameplay. Reviewing's a bit different, but yeah, you can end up with people trying to chase likes, and I've done it in the past, and I thought, right, I'm going to do a review, and I'm going to aim to get, I don't know, 2,000 reads within a month, and you're like, why has nobody read it? I've done reviews on certain things that you would have assumed would be massive, and they weren't. I was the first one to put a written review out on the TM Glock 19, and I think even after 2.5 years, it's probably only had a couple of hundred people read it.
Wow, yeah, and you'd think that would be a really big one. I've done stuff,
Yeah.
I've done videos, which I think are really good, of course. A lot of my most technical stuff.
They all are.
Later. But I've got my time to target video. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. It really doesn't, it's really not very successful, but there's some proper, really good information. It just depends what people are looking for, I guess. But I guess
it's funny because you try and put something out there that isn't covered anywhere else, and sometimes it just falls way short of the mark. Like your time to target is something that isn't really brought up a lot. People talk about range, they talk about FPS. What they don't talk about is trying to find that optimum time to target, especially when you're shooting at moving people. It's quite important, and you'd assume that it would be watched more often. Hopefully, people will. You could put a link in it.
Yeah, go and watch my time to target video. It's really good. We'll get onto that. I shoot a load of different weight BBs at different targets from 10 to 50 meters, and I time how long it takes. And then because basically the myth that heavy BBs go slowly isn't true after about 20, 30 meters. So there you go. Okay, you also, as well as doing reviews, you've written some really interesting. I love them. I think our brains are largely in the same place. Some opinion pieces. So what kind of motivates you into writing those?
So those are always more spontaneous. They are generally written in a very, very short time period. I will probably write them in the space of an hour, and they go out. And I don't second guess myself anymore. I used to, because some of them are some of them are controversial. I wrote one that was top 5 reasons why women shouldn't play airsoft, which got me a lot of hate mail. I'll tell everybody right now before they think that I'm a dickhead. The subject of the blog was not 5 reasons why women shouldn't play airsoft. It was actually about clickbait. But it proved the point. The amount of aggravation I got from a couple of the bigger community groups. Sorry, I'm swinging around at my chair. It shouldn't be one of these swingy chairs.
That's why I sit on a fixed one.
Yeah, I should bring one of the chairs up from the dining room. I'd behave then.
Don't worry about it. Okay, so we're talking about you were getting a lot of hate mail from bigger groups, probably from people that hadn't actually read the blog and just looked at the headline.
Yeah, absolutely. And even after that, I had a couple of people who read it and then tried to justify the argument of why they hated it after reading it, and I'm like, that's fine, And I got called in fact, one of these guys I'm friends with now, but he said that I was overly opinionated and up my own ass, and I'm like, yeah, probably right.
Yeah, it fits on me as well. I'm definitely over opinionated. I tend to be quite polite in YouTube, a bit less polite on live streams and in person, quite ranty.
Yeah. I've met a lot of people in Airsoft. I've met people I like, I've met people I don't like, and I generally just tend to walk away from people I don't like. I'm not going to kick up a fuss. I'm not going to, and you do get them in the various communities, everybody seems to want to watch an argument unfold, and I'm really not that bothered. In fact, Rob's just said triggered by the BS on Insta. No, not really. I look at it, I watch it, I generally know what's going on, but I'm not bothered by it. You do you.
Indeed. We just had a Chinook go overhead. I live quite near Chilwell Barracks in Nottingham, so that was the 4-8 Chinook flying overhead, which was pretty cool. Occasionally we get Apaches, which is really good fun.
I had one of the Atlas, the 4 turboprop planes. I had one of those fly over my house at about 1,500 feet a couple of hours ago. I had no idea what it was, and I had a look on Flight Radar.
Yeah, we had one a while ago, actually. Anyway, and we go complete tangent. We're talking about airsoft. We're talking about airsoft, not aircraft spotting. But in case anyone heard the Chinook, which they probably did. Okay, so so that's you. That's cool. Thanks for that, Dan. I think that really helps everyone get to know who you are. So how do you think a review should be carried out?
I think to a degree you've got to be passionate enough about airsoft, but dispassionate about the product that you're reviewing. You've got to be very aware of the standpoint that you're reviewing it from. I'm a 37-year-old civilian airsofter, so when I review a Haley Strategic D3CR micro chest rig, you have to look at it from the point of view of what you're using it. I can talk about the quality. I can't talk about how well it will serve you in Afghanistan, or
Yep.
will it fit an M-bitter radio or a full medical blowout kit, and various things like that. But I can talk about it will hold 3 magazines and it will be more than enough for your average airsofter. I try and put into it sometimes doesn't come across. I've read some of my early stuff in particular, and it doesn't. But you have to obviously signpost people, because I do have all sorts of people read the blog. The Haley micro rig, for example, massive amount of people read it every day, and I've had that review out for a couple of years now, and a lot of them will be looking at reviews with an intent to use it for either civilian shooting in the US, or potentially even law enforcement or military.
Yep.
So they have to be aware that when I say it's good for airsoft. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good for their role. Try and be factual. Always separate your own personal opinion with facts, and make sure that it's very much in context, which is which. It can be very difficult to do. If I don't like something, I generally don't review it. And that's not because I feel like I should always have positive reviews, but I'm just really, it does take time to write stuff down. When you have to look at the details, you have to look at stuff that isn't on the manufacturer's website, and you have to put everything into context, and I can't be bothered to do it if I don't like it. I've got loads of stuff that I've not reviewed, purely because I don't want to waste my time. I don't do it as a full-time.
I think it's a very good point, because part of the reason, well, no, this channel used to be associated with Airsoft Action Magazine, and I used to write for Airsoft Action Magazine. Part of the reason, my view on airsoft has changed. I've gone much more down the acting out of law enforcement and military scenarios for the purposes of recreation line, and I was being asked to review stuff that I didn't like, or didn't meet the kind of definition of airsoft as I see it, and I wasn't. And I was just not. It was not going to be a genuine review, because I didn't like that product. There's nothing probably wrong with that product. There's nothing wrong with that ICS pistol. It just wasn't a replica of a real firearm.
Yeah, and
it's just not going to work for me.
You're never going to see a review of the ARP9 on my blog. And I've had people, a friend of mine, he said, "Oh, do you want to borrow it for a review?" And I'm like, with all due respect, it's a bag of shit. Sorry, I won't swear, but it's not what I want to review. It's just not something that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to the followers of my blog, I don't think they'd be interested.
No. I could probably do the same, and I'd probably pick up some views from people outside of my normal viewing group. But it's just not. I'm not going to enjoy it, No. And so I've got a relationship with Taiwan Gun at the moment, and let's be super honest, they pay me to review guns, and it goes on.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And it's a slightly weird relationship in that my content goes on their channel, but that's because their channel's bigger than mine, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm super honest about it. They pay me to review guns. But also my relationship with Taiwan Gun is they know that I will only review military and law enforcement replicas, because that's what I'm into. And there's nothing wrong with paid reviews. You just need to be super honest about it.
No, there isn't. It's the ones that I actually have an issue with are the ones that aren't paid, but you think that they are, because they're being so disingenuous with how they're reviewing it. When you see people, and I think we were talking about this as well, when you look at unboxing reviews and people talk about, it's brilliant, and it will range 60 meters, and you've got to question, have you actually measured it, or are you just guessing? Are you thinking that, just because it outshoots your upgraded TM recoil, it doesn't really impress me. You've got to be very, very, and this is, again, it's why I don't look at usually ranges when I review guns, because it's very subjective. It depends on the ammo that you use, whether you've tweaked the hop. There's so many different things you've got to look at. It's sorry, Fred's just yeah, no, I was all right on the run, mate. Just
That's why you were heading out for one.
it was more of a hobble, to be honest. But yeah, it's very, very difficult to review certain things well, which is why some things I've avoided and some things I take a lot of time doing.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think I don't. I know I do. Actually, it's funny enough. I do reviews. I tend to shy away from them. I tend to like presenting in that kind of classical sense. I tend to like presenting range tests. Because here's what happened with this gun on this day with these BBs. These are the results.
Yeah, I got to say, actually,
make your own mind up.
Your range tests that you've done, I've found to be very, very honest. People, they do range tests, but it's in the garden and they're shooting the tin can, and it's all subjective, and you don't really know whether or not the range that they've quoted, the 30 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, actually is. But you can look at the way that you've done it on an actual range. I mean, you don't have to do it on an actual range, no. But the way that you've done it, and there's a certain degree of a scientific method.
Ish, yeah. But I know what you mean.
Well, yeah. And it seems to work really well.
Yeah, there's stuff like people keep asking me to do scope cams, and I'm like, you're not really going to learn anything. And also, because of Thurliston, the wind at Thurliston generally goes right to left. What you'll see is me shooting. You'll see me holding 4 targets left, or 4 targets right half the time, and you'll be like, why is the BB doing weird stuff? Sometimes it's just a bit funny. I was very lucky to find that place. I saw a Facebook advert and gave them a ring, and they were like, "Come down." I wish there were more places like that. People often ask me, are there any more places like that? And I wish there were. I wish there were more air gun clubs that were completely open to airsofters, because it just allows you to do stuff. And you've got a measured range, and the attack sense targets, they've also really helped. I don't really need them. But they give a visual indicator to the viewers of what's going on.
I mean, when you're 60 meters away from a target, it's very difficult to see if you've hit or not. You might hear it, you might not, especially if you've got wind. Whereas with the attack sense ones, you can see it.
So it's been quite fortuitous in that regard. I'd love to shoot in a warehouse, but it's one of those trying to
Yeah, I keep trying to find that magical 100 meter long warehouse that I can test everything out properly.
Amazing. But no,
it's
a great place.
It's only 20 meters, so yeah, not very useful.
It's a great place, and they've been very good to me, and we've got a really good working relationship now. So, but yeah, that's been brilliant. But before that, we went to the jail. We went to a couple of semi-secret places, and we always shot measured ranges. We had the tactical chair early on, but we've always tried to do it as sensibly as possible. Testing things scientifically is very difficult unless you're in a lab. It's just not going to happen. But we tended to do what we can. I think you you do as much as you can yourself as well. You tend to keep it objective and stay with the facts, which is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, anybody can read anybody else's opinion, and although a lot of my reviews will have my opinion in it, I also try and make sure that even if somebody wasn't necessarily going to agree with my opinion, that they can actually see a lot of the other facts that led me to that on their own.
Yeah, and that's what I tend to do myself. I tend to try and place the facts, certainly even with the Taiwan Gun stuff, which is a paid for review. I tend to present as many facts as I can, and then let people make their own decisions up from what I've presented. Give them as much information as they can. So in reviews, Dan, what's important to you? What drives you? What things do you like to see in a review, particularly if you're looking at other people's content?
So I'm very picky about what I look at review-wise, because I find that if you do immerse yourself in watching a lot of other people's reviews, you're either watching the same thing over and over again, or you can end up, when you review the same product especially, you've got to be very careful about plagiarizing their content. So when I watch somebody else's review, I need to see something that I wouldn't get out of the manufacturer's website. The person that's reviewing it is as important as the product that they're reviewing. If I looked at, say, for example, and I picked an item out of thin air, and I looked at that item being reviewed, if it wasn't from somebody that I trusted, I wouldn't trust the review itself.
Yeah.
So even if it was the only review, I couldn't base my decision to buy or not buy purely on that one viewpoint alone. Whereas I have had it, and get misused. I've had people who I trust implicitly go, actually, this product here is brilliant. And I've gone, it wasn't even on my radar, or I've had a negative preconception about that product, and I've bought it based upon what they've said. And, again, I'm always skeptical about somebody else's. Even if I trust them, their opinion might not be the same as mine. But it does go a long way to sort of make it a more justifiable purchase. And so, yeah, it's to cut a long story short, it's more about the person than what they're reviewing.
Okay.
The person has to have a good track record. Generally, if they've got 20, 30 different 10% off codes for various different, airsoft companies, I'm not going to trust what they say, because, their opinion is bought and paid for.
I think it's a really interesting point. I saw a comment a while ago. Oh my God, was it on? It might have been one in an airsoft group, but it was someone was saying, I'll trust the opinion of someone that's bought that product, used that product, and played with that product vastly more than I'll trust the opinion of someone that's been given it. And
you can end up, though, there's two things that can happen when you buy a product, and I've seen people review it, an item, well or badly, and they either have buyer's remorse, or more commonly, they will have trying to find the right word here. Sorry, this is why writing is more my forte than YouTube. I have 20 hours if I want to find one word. They have to justify their purchase. So you'll find that people will spend 1,200 quid on a TM recoil, fully upgraded, and they will have to justify it. They'll say, it's brilliant, it'll beat anything else, it's the best gun on the field, I'm never outranged. And that's not always true, but in their head it is, because they have a certain placebo effect, and they think it's better than it is because of the amount that they've spent on it. People who go, oh yeah, this chest rig's better than a repro one because it's twice as much and the QC's better. Yeah, very often that's the case. Sometimes it's not, and it's all about overall experience as well. So if you've got this one thing and you think it's amazing, you're only looking at it from that one viewpoint. The more and more things that you've purchased, the more chest rigs you've had, the more replicas you've had, the more slings you've tried, it will make your opinion that much more valid. And that's not to say that somebody who's just started out airsoft doesn't have a valid opinion, but I'm probably not going to spend 500-600 quid on an item based upon their opinion alone.
Yeah, you see it a lot in certainly Facebook groups. Forums tended to be a bit more sensible, but what gun should I buy? And you'll get 50 different opinions based on 50 people's first ever purchase and only ever purchase, and they're completely lacking in context.
But you also get people who are recommending stuff that they don't own because their friend recommended it, or because they've been told to recommend it. When you look at, and we won't mention any names, but when you look at places to upgrade your TM recoil, where should I send it? Send it to this guy, he's amazing. Send it to these guys, they're amazing. It's like, have you actually sent your gun there? No. Then don't recommend it. Just keep your mouth shut. If you haven't got a valid opinion, and a valid opinion is one that you've got experience on, don't say anything. And again, this is why when you see a lot of the reviews out there of certain things, you have to be very skeptical about where it's come from, because they are reviewing it from a viewpoint of very limited experience. And I'm not saying I'm amazing. There are people who have a lot more experience than me. But I would say that I've been around long enough to know what I like, what I don't, what's going to fit people who want to use it for a similar sort of reason as I do.
I think you said it quite early on about your perspective. So again, you're a 37-year-old civilian. I'm a 44-year-old civilian. I'm also a big guy. So my perspective is going to change. If you're an 18-year-old racing snake, I'm going to have a completely different opinion on some stuff than those guys. It's just not going to be the same. And that's just one of the things. So you need to understand, I think that's important to understand who is doing the review, what their background is, how much experience do they have, and who are they? Who are they physically? Who are they mentally? What is their take on stuff?
That's why I don't review combat shirts, because I look like a condom full of walnuts.
I look awful, absolutely awful in combat shirts.
Or a badly packed sausage.
I have to have danglers on my plate carriers to hide my belly.
Yeah. The bigger the better.
Bigger. So yes, exactly. So that my bias for dangler pouches, I want the bigger the dangler pouch as possible to cover up as much belly as possible. And that's that's completely skewed that argument. So what? So okay. So you tend to do. So you talked about your real steel stuff. Why is it you tend to like real steel rather than real steel is always a funny term. Real steel rather than repro.
So it hasn't always been that way. When I got back into Airsoft in 2012, most of my stuff was really, really cheap. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, saving up to buy a house. Wasn't in a very well-paid job at all. At the time I was on minimum wage. I was working as an upholsterer, so it wasn't very good money. It was very long hours, and most of my money went into obviously savings. But it just wasn't hitting the mark. I found that I was choosing stuff that I didn't want to. Things like, for example, an Arctis chest rig, because it was real and because the quality was there, but I could get it for cheap. For example, I wanted a JPC. For a long, long time, I wanted a JPC, but I couldn't afford a real one. Still probably can't really justify buying a real one. But I wanted to get a good repro, and unfortunately, it's very tricky to find out what a good repro was and what a bad repro was, because you heard horror stories about Semapo using weird pinkish sort of multicam fabric. So yeah, and I kind of went, you know what, actually, if I'm going to spend my money, I might as well spend twice as much and worry about it later. But I have been very, very particular about what I do buy and what I don't buy. My first sort of real proper chest rig was a Haley D3CR, the original one, and I got that second hand. It wasn't brand new; it was second hand. It was in very good condition. I got it for steel. I got it for £100, which was still a lot of money. And at the time, I was thinking, bloody hell, I could buy myself 4 Arctis chest rigs, or 2 Fly, or TMC. In fact, this was before TMC were any good. But yeah, I could buy a whole loadout for that kind of money. And I bought it, and instantly it was kind of like a switch went off in my head, and I just absolutely loved it. Less than 2 months later, I had a bonus at work, and I went out and bought myself a set of genuine Cry G3s. That was more actually so that I'd fit in at a certain game. I went to Blue Fox 2, and that was kind of where it really ramped up. Blue Fox 2. Do you know about that event?
I don't know.
So it was. Some people think it was the greatest airsoft event ever, and a lot of the people who went didn't really have a good time. It was hosted at a fire service college, and there were a lot of different scenarios that could have been done. I mean, we did a night attack on an oil rig. It was amazing.
Wow.
There was a train there. Yeah, in fact, Dave was there. Dave was one of the organisers, I think, and it was an amazing event. Unfortunately, it was a big event. The organisers weren't used to that kind of scale, and it kind of it diluted to the point where a lot of people left early. Even I left early, and that's kind of not something I usually do. I paid good money to go to the event, and I left, I think, at 2 o'clock in the morning and drove home.
Cobalt CO9.
So yeah.
Don't speak of it, Dan. Let it die. Let it die.
You see, I was with Cobalt. I'm trying to work out who CO9 is. Which one is CO9? Is that Sam? No. I can't remember their numbers. Anyway, I went there with a lot of Cobalt, a lot of Diablo, Grey Fox, and who were the others? Christ, there were loads of people at that event. And yeah, I went, I think almost overnight, I went from being your average sort of filthy casual skirmisher to being hardcore milsimmer. I ended up buying Gen 3 night vision, Cry G3s. Admittedly, my plate carrier, I think it was a Warrior DCS. So it wasn't the best plate carrier in the world, but it was all right. And that was really the start of a long, probably
Yeah.
Oh, it's Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Sam. So we've kind of one of your most famous blogs that I've read was about Cry trousers and why they probably do actually make you a better player. Well, not. And
Yeah, that was
Jack,
a recent one actually.
yeah, Jack O'Neill SG1 says pants. Pants are one of the things where money really pays out. About 2 years ago, he switched from Repro Cry G3s to UF Pro Strikers. He said it's a very good decision. And you get a lot of. We've done this before on the channel, but let's do it again anyway. You get a lot of the guys going, who don't, who the inverse,
just as good.
yeah, or inverse gear snobbery, and all this sort of stuff, which really winds me. Generally, and everyone knows my opinion, who generally watches my channel, is that generally it's the reverse. The inverse gear snobbery is way more prevalent than the actual gear snobbery. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, because it does, because people do hate on the pause.
Put it into perspective, in the time that I've owned my Cry G3s, I've also owned 3 pairs of Flash Force Industries M81 Cries, Repro Cries, because they keep on wearing out. And my genuine ones, I would have to put used in the condition, but there's nothing wrong with them. They're still as good as they were the day I bought them. I'm quite careful. I don't wash them using any kind of fabric conditioner. They just go in water and that's it.
Yeah.
To the point where my wife is a little bit funny. Whenever I bring camouflage, she's like, "Can I wash this for something else, or does it have to go on its own?"
My partner's the same. She knows.
Yeah.
She if I'm bringing in gear, she asks me. She's actually saying, "What can I wash this with? Does it need to go by its own? Does it need?" And I'm like,
this all happened because I went to one night game, and there were a couple of guys wearing genuine Cries, and they glowed in the dark. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and I'm like, what the fuck is it? Is it like, sorry, is it fake? And he went, no, they've been using detergent, and you've got something called optical brighteners in laundry powder.
Yep.
And what happens is it glows under infrared light. So I've always been very, very anal with my wife about not using any kind of fabric softener or conditioner in with my Cries.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things that never gets picked up, actually. Generally in a lot of those conversations, people never talk about IRR.
Yeah,
it's really quite important.
Massively.
It's only important if you're going to run around with nods, or if you intend to be in an environment where other people with nods are looking at you. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
If you can't afford nods and you want to be more effective at fighting at night, make sure that your clothing is infrared treated, so that you won't at least glow up in the middle of the night. Because that will help. Because if I shine an IR light out into the woods, you will glow.
Absolutely. Gadge and I did a video ages ago where we took a load of stuff, Russian repro, real stuff, some mad Czech stuff, which completely actually had a printed camouflage pattern you could only see under infrared. That was pretty nuts. Into the woods and did a video on it, and it's something actually. Yeah, it's something that doesn't generally get brought up a lot. If you're gonna play with nods, you're gonna be around nods. Yeah, infrared treated clothing is the way forward. Otherwise, you will you just glow. You just glow white. I've got Civvy stuff which is black, and then if you if you put an IR or even just look through night vision at it, it just goes completely white. It's mental.
Yeah.
They're actually those US Desert Parkers. The cool ones everyone really likes.
Oh, the Adventure Tech ones, yeah, they glow like you're made out of a giant Siloon stick.
Then the original ones are like a black hole.
Yeah.
So you just see this massive black blob. It's hilarious. They really, really don't work. So your discussion behind the kind of, I remember that blog. And it was a really good point. It's if you care about stuff like that, spending money is fine. And yes, it will make you more comfortable. It will make you more mobile. It will mean you can spend longer in the field.
The key to it is, and hopefully this came across in the blog, is that what good gear allows you to do is not worry about your gear failing you. You can be the weakest link.
Yeah.
And people always say, "Oh yeah, get fit. You're a fat bastard." Yeah, I am. But I could be a fat git wearing Cries, or I could be a fat git wearing Repro Cries with a torn crotch. My Cries probably work a lot harder than anybody else's. But it allows me to concentrate on just moving and shooting. I don't need to worry about not overstressing my clothing. I will break before my clothing hurts. And that's not what it should be. But I'm not a SEAL. I'm not in the SAS. I'm not a rifleman. I don't need to worry about any of that. I've got a boring day job. All I need to worry about is, will my £300 investment last me a few years, or am I going to ruin a 60 quid pair of trousers every other game?
Yep, I've blown out enough trousers over the years that's not going to happen anymore. Okay, so right, what would you like to see other reviewers do differently, Dan? This could be go down the rabbit hole here. We'll try and stay vaguely positive.
Yeah,
But
so I think there are some very good reviewers, but I think what I would like to see is people think about the product that they're reviewing. Does it need to be reviewed for a start? And look at your motivation for doing it. That's the biggest thing. A lot of people look at established blogs and reviewing channels, and they think, oh yeah, I really want to do that. I want to have a relationship with this company or that company, and I want to get sent this or that. And honestly, if I was to choose to devote my time into running shifts at Tesco or Burger King or wherever, I'd earn a lot more money out of it. Don't do it because you want gear. Don't do it because you want to get paid, because I don't earn a penny out of ATRG. I do get sent stuff. I'm honest and open about it, but I certainly don't make any money out of it. And if anybody wants to get into reviewing for that reason, I can tell you now, there's maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 people in the world, airsoft wise, that get paid enough to make a full-time job out of it.
Yep, I certainly don't. Someone just made a comment. More long term. So, more long term reviews would be great. The problem with long term,
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree, and this is, but I'll give you my opinion, and then Dan can follow up. The problem with long term reviews, particularly for me as a YouTuber, is if I don't, it's got to get out timely. It's got to get out within a certain time period, or my stuff's just going to get buried. So you have to be. We talked about, I don't like chasing the algorithm, but there's also a point where you have to get your content out, or it just becomes irrelevant. I don't know what you think, Dan.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So if I was to review the micro chest rig now, more than 3 years after it's been released, yeah, people would still read it, but it wouldn't generate enough for it to, I don't want to say worthwhile, because it's still worthwhile because I enjoyed reviewing it. And, some of my stuff I've had for years before I review it. I've still got things here that, I'm thinking, can I justify reviewing an Arctis 42 pattern chest rig? And that's kind of on the other side. I can't justify it. Yeah, maybe. Maybe for the anniversary of the blog, I don't know. But yeah, it's got to be.
Thank you, British Surplus.
Yeah, I'll review a Denison smock next and see, but there is a trade-off, I've got to look at stuff, and especially if I've been sent something, there is more of an impetus, and I'm always very, very particular when I get sent stuff. I do say, look, my opinion is going to be my opinion. It's not going to be changed by what you say to me beforehand. There are no terms and conditions. If I think it's shit, I'll probably just send it back to you and say, improve this, improve that, and then send it back. And that has happened a couple of times. Most of the time they just release it anyway without listening to any other concerns, and that's fine, because there'll be 24 unboxing videos the week later, and they'll all give it a positive review, and it'll sell. Whatever, I don't care. But if I do like something and I've got concerns, even if it was sent to me for free, I'm still going to tell you those concerns. And I've had a bit of kickback off of one replica manufacturer who I highlighted a couple of things I didn't like about the way that it was designed, and room for improvement. And again, they didn't listen to anything I said, which is, they don't have to. I'm one guy, and overwhelmingly a lot of people liked it. But they asked me to change it, and I said no. And then they asked me to remove it, and I said no. I didn't take any money. I didn't get a free gun, didn't get a free anything. My opinion is, in my opinion, relative to people who want, a well-rounded, thought-out review. And again, that's difficult because it's all subjective. Some people are not going to agree with what I say. Some people will, and I don't expect everybody to. That's the other thing. I don't take it personally. If somebody says you're wrong, that's fine. Tell me why I'm wrong. I really want to know. I do. I might still think I'm wrong, but I will listen. somebody says you're wrong about this because of, I will take that on board. I will make sure that if I've made a genuine factual mistake, I will go as far as to amend the blog if needed.
Yeah.
But on my opinion, I won't. But if I state that, say for example, it's 330D Cordura and it's not, then I will change it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've had several bits and bobs I've been sent to review, both when I was working for the magazine and now when I'm an independent. And it was just there was either some problems with it or I just really didn't like it. And that I went back with feedback. Some stuff I've had a couple of gas guns which just didn't work from big manufacturers, and they just didn't work.
I think Gadge is talking about a certain grenade that we were talking about on Facebook the other day. Actually.
yeah. So that grenade that shan't be named, Gadge and I got a long time ago, and we went to Comet Ready Derby.
You're very lucky because no one else got one.
That's not that one. This is another one.
Another one.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one. We'll talk about that one in a minute.
Is this a more recent one?
No, this is a later one. This is an earlier one. So we took that grenade to a site, Comet Ready in Derby, which is their inner city site, is sadly closed. And Gadge dropped it at this is a BB grenade. Gadge dropped it at his feet, and from arm to the side, full extension, dropped it down, and the BBs didn't hit his feet.
Well, that's that's part of the course, really, with airsoft grenades. But
so it was pretty poor. So we gave him a load of feedback. We gave him actually a lot of feedback and a lot of slow motion and a lot of ran it. Gave him a lot of feedback to improve that product, which they may or may not have done. We certainly never heard anything back from them. But that's one of those things, really. One thing I won't stand for if something is dangerous, that's a different story. But I've never really come across it. We've come across it a couple of times in the magazine where we've.
I have. I've had one, and it was a grenade as well. And actually, Fred, who's watching, he had the same one. In fact, I got one for free that I borrowed. Fred paid good hard money for his. Mine refused to go off repeatedly until it went off without me actually doing very much. And I only had the priming charge. I didn't even have the full charge in it. And my ears were ringing for hours. So. I kind of sent that one straight back and went, this is what I think you should change. And he went, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And nothing happened. And then he went out and released it. And I kind of tried to nudge a few people that I knew into maybe not parting with their hard-earned cash. But, soon enough. Yeah, I'm on about the paperweight, Fred. Yeah. Lovely looking paperweight.
So the other grenade we're talking about, which is the MAS-G. We did get hold of that for... We did actually have one, guys. It does actually exist. We did actually have one. And we went to the same site in Derby, and it actually went off about 4 times, and then it stopped. And then it went back. And then we did it. It was meant to have an IR tripwire. Do you remember that bit on the?
Yes. Yeah. It was meant to have a lot of things.
So the IR tripwire, we actually had some nods with us. Because I was doing a review for Scott Country on their nods. So we actually were looking at it through their nods, and there was no IR going on. So it was one of those. So that went back. So we actually had them. It did actually exist for like about 4 hours before we had to go back again.
He's still posting on his Facebook page. Every so often you see a post come up, and I'm like, wow, that's commitment. That's real commitment. To tell people that things are still moving. What is it? 4 years after everybody else kind of walked away from it.
Don't know. Phil Bucknell, who's watching, has had quite a lot of. I don't know if he's had any communication in the last couple of years, but was talking to Chris quite a lot at MAS-G. Overpromised, under-delivered, or whatever it was. Or you could buy, any number of other grenades and be quite happy. So some stuff is quite frustrating. You get it and you don't like it. And again, we've talked about that earlier, and if you don't like something, it's very, very hard to be positive about it. And it may just be completely personal. I'm sure there are some fantastic replicas out there, but they're not replicas of anything I'm interested in.
One of the only things that I've reviewed that I've absolutely hated was a couple of Angry Gun parts for the MWS, and they just refused to work. They completely refused. I had an ambidextrous selector, an ambidextrous charging handle, which funnily enough worked because there's literally no way you can screw that up. It kind of has to work. If it'll fit in the gun, it'll work. And an ambidextrous magazine release. at all. I had to physically, I couldn't send it back because it was to eHobby Asia about 6 months before they went under. And I sent them a message and I said it doesn't work, and they were like, "Oh yeah, post it back at your own expense, and we'll give you a refund." And I looked at the cost of sending a tiny selector, and it cost me more than I paid to send it back recorded, because I don't do anything unrecorded. It's always recorded. And I didn't bother. And in the end, I thought, you know what, screw it. I'm going to have a look at my original selector. And I got a Dremel out and I Dremeled it so that it fitted. But it was never as good as the original Marui. So I just chucked it, and I thought, do I review it? Do I not? And in the end, I turned it into a kind of a how to mod it, but also a bit more of a public safety announcement of don't buy it because it's crap. But I get quite a lot of pushback, because every time somebody goes, "Oh, do you recommend the Angry Gun? What's it?" And I'm like, "I'll stop you at Angry Gun. I don't recommend it. It's
Here we go. Well,
rubbish."
Phil Bucknell asked the question. Interesting to know, Dan. Is there any Angry Gun stuff, the MWS, you would recommend, or would you always go for?
I would say if it's got Angry Gun written on the box, I'd chuck it in the bin straight away. Save yourself the heartache. Don't even try and install it, because there's a 1 in 100 chance that you might break something else. So no, absolutely not. The only thing that I've ever got to fit was the BCM type charging handle, and to be honest, why would you buy that when there are better other brands on the market? Angry Gun are very prevalent. There's lots of Angry Gun stuff around, and it's also sold domestically in the UK.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will buy it, and I see a lot of people recommending it. Not always people who own it themselves. Again, onto my earlier point, don't recommend something if you don't own it.
I think I've got two bits. I've got the Angry Gun rail on my L119A2, and I've got the Geisley Mark 16 clone on my Ergi, both of which are fine, but they're not. They're fine. They're not great.
So yeah, I mean, to a degree, they're absolutely fine. I would say that the Mark 16 rail does have one fault, which is the QD point, because the barrel nut's too big. It doesn't.
Mine are
fit
fine,
properly.
so I don't know whether I got an early one. Yeah, mine clicking absolutely fine.
On properly, because Airsoft is pretty stupid.
Whether they changed the barrel nut or something, I don't know. But mine, because I read your blog and I was like, hang on, and I went click. Actually, so there you go. You can change it.
I do know when I bought mine, a lot of people messaged me to go, does the QD point work, or is it like the Angry Gun one? And I went, what do you mean, like the Angry Gun one? They were like, no, the barrel nut's too long, so they must have shortened it.
Yeah, so my one, or whether mine's early or whether it's late, my one works fine.
Simon, I sold him that charging handle, so I'm glad I didn't slate it too much.
We're doing busted.
It's all right. I mean, it's I went kind of full Geisley on the rest of the rifle, so I needed an airborne charging handle, and Z Parts make one. So I actually got Gaz from Red Wolf to source me one at an extortionate cost, but I couldn't get it anywhere else. So I think I paid 70 quid for a charging handle that doesn't really offer me anything that I can't do with the standard MWS one.
Yeah, but when you're doing it, aren't you?
Yeah, and it looks
I've got one on mine. I think it's, God knows, AliExpress job. And the anodizing is completely different to the scope mount. It's completely different to the front rail, but hey, it's all...
That's not such a bad thing, they vary quite a lot by batch anyway. I first went down that rabbit hole when I looked at Mark 18 rails, and I actually did quite a popular blog. In fact, it's still quite popular. It's how to bake your Mark 18 rail, because you can bake a black one into an FDE color. You can't get it the sort of Madball color, but the Madball color is completely wrong anyway.
I don't really like one.
Yeah. The sort of golden bronzy color. Tokyo Marui have actually got theirs pretty spot on. VFC is probably the best repro though. But yeah, they range in colors. Some of them are grey, some of them are greenish colors, some of them are purple. It's weird.
Well, Gadge will know this. So Gadge has spent a long time in the reenactment circles, where they have enormous argument, and this is where sometimes reviewers get this. It's the wrong color, or it's this, or it's the wrong. Stuff changes, and fabric color changes. Certainly, and really anodized parts on. It's the classic 50 Shades of FDE thing. Anodized parts on guns change completely. There's stuff about what's the right color for an M16 in Vietnam. There's no right color. There's a massive spread depending on how old the chemicals in the anodizing bath was. And it can vary from nearly black down to virtually purple. It just depends where. And then people want matched upper and lower. And then if you look at on an AR, if you look at military ARs, they're not matched. They're very, very rarely matched. It's what so. I was talking to, actually, I had Nelson on from Archwick in Taiwan yesterday. I got an interview I'm going to put up in a week or two, talking to him about this kind of stuff as well. And he says, it's hilarious. What airsofters want from a product is often of a much higher standard in some regards than the real firearm would be.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with the rarer stuff, we tend to get really focused on a very, very small area. So when people look at, say, the L119A2, they look at the, let's say, 30 decent reference photos that there are. And when you consider that there's probably a good 3,000-4,000 of those, you're only looking at a very small percentage. So taking that as fact and everything else is not fact, until you've seen 20 reference photos showing the same thing, it can hem you in a little bit too much, which is why I don't generally do the reference sort of based exact replicas of a gun. Like the Obi-Wan Nairobi L119A2, not really my cup of tea. I don't like the optic. I don't like the layout. I don't like the setup. I don't like the L119A2. It's just not my cup of tea. If I built it, somebody would say, no, that's wrong. You've used the wrong sling mount. It's what I had lying around, or it's what I wanted to use.
They're all different as well. This is really funny. They're all different.
They are.
They came from the factory and out the armory in one way, and then by the time the guys have been on them, they're all completely different. I was looking at reference photos of Ergies that the Green Berets had been using, and the minute the guys touched them, they're all completely different. Some of them are painted, some of them are half painted. There's different stocks, grips, scope, everything. Everything's completely different. So it's in some cases it's very rare where you can go, this is the correct thing. And so sometimes if you're reviewing, I'll try and segue back to our original topic. Sometimes trying to do a review can be very difficult because you don't actually know what you're reviewing or what the standard is in the first place.
Yeah, and especially if I'm reviewing, and I've done this a couple of times recently, where I'm reviewing a reproduction of something that I don't have the real one. I think the Evolution Gear EXPS3 was probably the most recent one that I've done, and I had to sort of tell people that it was a very, very good looking, very accurate looking replica, but without being able to stick it side by side, which I'd love to do. But and I was tempted, but I'm not going to spend 750 quid on a site that could get smashed. So, as much as I want to own a real EOTech, and I'd love to be able to put it next to one, I just don't have the ability to do that. Funnily enough, I've got a few friends with real ones, and I've seen them up close, and I've looked through them, and I know exactly what they look like. And going off of memory, it looks exactly the same. So yeah, like you said, you do have to be careful when you tell somebody it's exactly like the real one. Like the Mark 16 rail. Oh, it's exactly like the real one. It's almost indiscernible. It might be, but unless you've got the two right next to each other, it's very difficult to be very factual and say it is or it isn't. So you have to kind of signpost people to a degree and let them know that it's going to be close, but close enough for airsoft. But if you put it next to a real one, or if you showed it to a guy who worked for Geisley, he will know.
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, again, I'll just go back to my interview, and it'll come up in the interview with Archwick, which you guys will see in a week or two. When they made the Mark 13, which they're the absolute big ass 300 Win Mag sniper rifle. They went out and bought. In Taiwan, they were able to go out and buy the AI chassis that the gun sits in, so they could do a 1-to-1 reference.
Yeah.
A lot of airsoft manufacturers can't do that.
Angry Gun are notorious for taking a photo of something and using basically guesstimations, which is all right for airsoft, I guess. But when you've got their competition, for example, How, who don't like to build anything unless they've got a real one that they can literally 3D scan, and replicate as close as possible. They're not perfect, nothing ever is, but it especially when one's cheaper than the other, it kind of confused me a little bit.
Okay, so we're talking about reviews. We're talking about stuff we'd like to see reviewers, and we'll go back to the original question, which was.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
No. It's a live stream. It's what goes. I've been waffling as well, and it's about what would you like to see reviewers do differently. And we kind of talked about being honest about your perspective, being honest about who you are, how you're approaching a review, and communicating that. And I think what the common thread in what we've just been talking about is being, and it's same as your EOTech thing. I can't put them, as long as you tell your viewers, I can't put them side by side and show you a picture. That's absolutely fine because they know what they're reading, and that's cool. So, what other kind of other stuff would you like to see reviewers do differently?
I'd like to see reviewers go into a little bit more detail. Maybe, and I'm notoriously bad for this, structuring the review so that you cover every point that needs to be covered, that you don't get sidetracked. And when I read a review, I want to be able to know whether or not it's the right product for me by reading that review. I don't want any kind of outside information. I just want to know, is that it for me? And some people get sidetracked to the point where about the MP5, they'll talk about the real one for half the review. I don't care. I'm looking at the MP5 because I know about the real one or because I want an MP5. I don't need to know that it was used in the 1980 Iranian embassy siege. It's common knowledge. And I do find that some reviewers do get a little bit hemmed up in that. And there are exceptions to the rule. For example, if you were to look at something that was very, very useful for navigation, then a bit of background as to I was an infantryman for 7 years and I always struggled with this or that, and this is the reason for the review. That's brilliant. It's kind of putting everything into context. But to tell me basic stuff that I don't need to know, or stuff I can read on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I don't need to know about Heckler and Koch every time I read a review of Heckler.
Absolutely.
And I don't need to know about the real firearm. A little bit, fine, but I don't need to read half the review on the company, the real company, and the real firearm. I can work that out myself. Yeah. A little bit. A little bit to put it in context is valuable, but yeah.
Yeah. And actually, Matthew mentioned about battery fitment and mag compatibility. They're two good points, and I think I've probably glossed over them in the past. And it is important. I assume that people know that most of the stuff that I buy is TM, and therefore it's going to be compatible with TM stuff. But the SIG ones, the SIG pistols, they'll be compatible with WE, or they might not be. And yeah, it's valuable information because people might already have a WE Glock 17 and they want to know if the new Gen 4 Glock 17 from TM is compatible with their existing mags. I don't mention it. I'd answer the question if somebody asked me, but yeah, there are probably...
It's something I don't do either, and it's a good point, Matthew, and I'll try and do that as well in the future. I tend to, I think one of the ones I did for Taiwan Gun on the SEMA SR25, the battery compartment in the stock is a pain in the arse because it's got a CAC sniper stock. So to get a battery in the back, you need to take all the gubbins out and then shove a battery in. And I did mention that, but but because that was a commercial review, I didn't labour on that point. If it was a review for me, I would probably have been a bit more expansive about that. But I did make sure I did say it was restrictive and it was difficult. So
I'm struggling at the moment with an ASG Scorpion. I can't seem to find any batteries that fit it.
There, Gadge, send Dan a PM later on, please. I know Gadge and Ben are probably watching. I'm sure they deal with this all the time. The battery compartment on Scorpion.
In fact, Ben's already given me a to-do list of what I need to change on it, what I don't need to change on it, and I'm like, we're not all going to put DSG setups in our ASG Scorpions, Ben, but
his is hilarious now. Ben's got a DSG set up in his. It's it's quite funny. I'm still waiting for it to shit itself.
I asked him for a free one and he said no. He said even I don't get a free one, which obviously don't like me very much.
I asked for a free one. I had to justify it, and I was like, I can't remember. I just want a free one. Okay, so yeah, I think context is really important. I think that's almost what's come up time and time again. Actually, in this conversation is about having the right context. Who are you? What are you reviewing, and why are you reviewing it?
I think overall, that's the biggest thing. Even if you can put your review into context, even if it's a bad review, people can put it in that context and they can go, this guy is, a civilian airsofter. He's been doing it for 4 years and he knows absolutely nothing about 2-point slings, but his review on the Ferro Slingster is appalling. He's not covered anything, but that's fine because he's put it into context, so you can dismiss it or you can take on board the information. If you look at somebody who says, yeah, I go to weekend games, and this has to hold up a 1,200 quid gun. I sometimes it can seem like going off. I'm not. What I'm doing is I'm using this for a whole weekend. It's holding up a very valuable piece of equipment. That's why I went for this. That's why I didn't go for a £5 sling from Viper, because I don't want it to drop. I don't want it to fail. And when I go from, slinging it across my back and jumping across the wall, I want to make sure that it's going to hold it instead of, like I saw happen, somebody sling shitting itself and destroying I think it was a 1,400 quid PTW.
I've seen a lot of slings go. Sling mounts is a big one. People buy cheap sling mounts, cheap £2 sling mounts.
Yeah, so real ferro slingster, TM recoil, and use a Wish or an AliExpress sling mount. Brilliant, great. Just because people think, 30 quid, 40 quid is too much for a pair of QD points for a sling mount. It's a lot of money, but you got to justify it, and that's how I do.
Yeah, I
was going to say I'm a little bit obsessed by slings and holsters.
Yeah, we've got some internet issues here, I'm afraid, guys. Hopefully it'll stabilise and we've dropped. Boo.
Oh dear.
Yep, hopefully it should still be up, but we've lost everybody. Let me just check the streams. Okay, guys, if you're still watching, hang on a minute, and hopefully we'll be back up in a second or two. It should hopefully reconnect. I might have to restart. I'll probably just do a... This is always the issue doing live streams. At least you're still there. That's a bonus. Blazer's back up. Okay, if you're back up, let us know, guys, or I'll have to cancel. Still here. Okay, we're back up. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll just chill for a little bit. If you've got any questions for Dan or me, fire them in while we're waiting for the stream to restabilise. I like the smell of the sling I've just got. I've got a surplus HK one for my MP5, which is unbelievably bad quality. I'm sure it's not going to break, but the standard of it is absolutely shocking. It's like
I've just bought myself an Arctis battle vest in OD, which is pretty rare to be honest, and I got it off of eBay for 35 quid, and it's pristine. It's just got one number written on the back. But I opened the package and it smelt like 1987. It's difficult to put a year on smells, but that was definitely a 1987 smell. It was halfway between a museum and somebody's damp old shed.
Yeah, I've just got a load of 58 pattern because we're doing a Falklands game later in the year. Which is going to be quite interesting. We're going to have to make sure we do it with a bit of dignity because there were some very brave people on both sides. And but I think the guys running the event are going to do it well and have some dignity for the sides. But yeah, so I've got some really, really manky 58 pattern webbing, which definitely smells like surplus. It's now in a box hidden. The dogs were quite interested in it for some reason. I'm not quite sure why.
Well, a good friend of mine, actually, going on a bit of a tangent, Sam will know him from Cobalt. A good friend of mine who I'll refer to as Cheese, went to a weekend milsim game, which was soaking wet. Bagged all his stuff up afterwards, put it in the boot of his car, went on deployment with work for 10 months, came back to base, got in his car, wondered what the smell was, emptied out the boot when he got home, and I think he had to throw away about 500-600 quid's worth of gear because it was just rotten.
Oh dear, that's yeah. That's another thing. Okay, so let's. I think we're kind of coming towards the end of the discussion, and the internet is definitely patchy. It's good to see 42 people are here. So if you can start firing your questions in, and we'll try and answer those, guys. Thanks for joining us. It's been really cool. And one of the things I'm going to ask you is, before we disappear, is are there any channels, blogs, and writers that you follow, obviously other than me, that you would recommend to other people?
Yeah, there's a few. Fred, who's on here, he runs the Geardo Pro. He's doing all that against him. He's not completely retarded, but he writes very, very good reviews.
He does write a very good review. Yeah.
His probably contain more swear words than both of ours combined, but he comes at it from a lot of valid experience. He does have a slight obsession with Plat Attack. But again, I won't hold that against him. Their stuff is very, very good. I've seen a lot of the Sterling guys use it on the Trees events, which are really, really tough events, to be honest, and it holds up very well. So yeah, definitely follow him. And his photography is superb. I'm always learning from his photography.
It's his pretty pictures. He's just finished
Yeah,
his Blood
definitely.
Diamond build, isn't he? Or ongoing. Is any build ever
Yeah.
finished? Yeah, which I enjoyed reading. I think today, actually.
And a lot of his stuff, he comes at it from me. His latest Blood Diamond Car 15 build, it's movie inspired, and that's kind of what a lot of my stuff is. It's movie inspired. It's not real sort of inspired by a real gun. It's inspired by one that's in the movies, because that's generally why a lot of people play Airsoft, is to recreate a movie, not because they want to go to Afghanistan. Some people do. Avoid them at all costs. But yeah. So yeah, Geardo Crow. I've got to mention obviously the Reptile House. Rich, I know relatively well. We play at the same local airsoft site. We play at Spartan Airsoft. Obviously not at the moment. And he is very, very particular about what he reviews and about what goes up. He won't put something up that he's unsure about at all. And to be honest, he's one of the people that I use as a sort of moral compass. I think, would he be disappointed if he read this? Because you don't want to let down the people that know you, especially.
Yeah.
And he has a very intricate eye for detail, and we do end up crossing paths on a lot of the stuff that we review. So I have to make sure that my review is different to his, which is difficult, because I read his stuff and I'm like, did I copy him by saying that? Christ, starting to use things like zipper garage and stuff like that in my vocabulary, which is something that he invented in his head. So yeah, definitely. And a lot of his stuff is UKSF specific, but if you go back through the archives, there's a lot of stuff on gear and other people's replicas, stuff like that, that is fascinating to look at. And there is quite a diverse amount of information on there. Other people, in fact, another good friend of mine, Rick, who helps run games down at Skirmish Exeter. He has what I think is quite a modestly small blog, but it's very specific. It focuses on the gear of SEAL Team, which is something I did quite early on in my blog. But I kind of ran out of the enthusiasm to do it. But he has gone through the kit that they use, and he's done several pieces now. I think his blog's called Hey Ho. I think
I'll track it down and put some links in the description.
I'll send you a link to it.
Brilliant, thank you.
I think Colin knows him. But yeah, I think it's one that most people won't have heard of, but it's definitely worth looking at, because he has gone very in depth. In fact, he went and contacted one of the gear manufacturers in the US who make the retention lanyards. I can't remember the name of them now, but I think he got quite friendly with them and they sent a few across to him.
Are there any kind of non-airsoft channels you follow or blogs you follow?
A few gear ones, but not really. No. I do follow Garand Thumb. He has changed over the last year, 18 months or so, though, but I have watched a lot of his stuff. His early stuff is definitely the stuff that I prefer to watch. But the humour is half the reason why people watch it. And to be honest, he keeps me hanging on. I've had a couple of chats with him, but, mostly sort of reacting to stuff that he's posted. But he's a friendly guy. But yeah, I do think that he's going down a path that I'm not sure about at the moment. But yeah, he's definitely worth watching. He's very, very well. You look at his earlier reviews, but a lot of his more modern stuff is definitely more aimed at sort of flat range LARPers in the US.
It's probably more me. I'm a flat range LARPer these days.
Yeah.
So it's one of those. Too. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm much more inspired by stuff like the Tank Museum's channel and Forgotten Weapons and In Range.
Yeah, Gun
Then I am by a lot.
Jesus.
Then certainly I am by a lot of Airsoft video channels. I read your stuff. I read Richard's stuff on the Reptile House. I really enjoy that. So, guys, thanks. Let's see if we got any questions. Max, not really a question, an observation. He bought a £6.99 QD sling attachment from Amazon, which is shit. Pull it a little bit and it falls out. Yes, that's what happens. And then if you trust your investment to a £7 QD sling and it pops out and smashes itself on the ground. I've seen 20 years I've been playing, I've seen God knows how many thousands of pounds worth of gear wrecked from bad
It's
QDs.
case in point of only being as strong as the weakest link, and when it's holding up something that's very, very valuable and you can't afford to replace, then you should spend a little bit extra on it, even if you don't want to, even if every part of you is saying, I don't want to spend 60 quid on 2 QD points and a mount, do it, it's worth it.
Yeah, it's a relative. If you've got an 80 quid plastic spec there, probably isn't. If you've got a £1,000 gun that you're really proud of, it probably is worth the money. Matthew Dawson, Russian slings, yeah, they are absolutely bomb-proof, as long as you don't get a cheap repro.
I had a genuine Russian sling on my old Cymer. In fact, I had 2 Cymer AKs, and I launched one down the stairs at Copill, and it was absolutely fine. In fact, if anything, it looked more Russian after. Yeah, genuine stuff. Even if it's genuine Russian stuff, it's built like a tank. So yeah, if you can buy, you don't necessarily have to buy real. There are some good repros that are worth having, but you got to look at it and go, it's got to hold my gun. That's its primary job, especially with slings.
Jack O'Neill, I don't know if you can answer this question, but how aggressive are companies about making positive reviews? It's an interesting question.
Not really. Not in my opinion. Arguably, I'm quite a small channel. There are a lot of people who don't know who I am, and they don't approach me. A lot of people don't approach me and say, can you review this? On the few occasions where I have been approached to review something, generally they just agree to the fact that I'll write whatever I want to write. Sometimes it can mean that you never get sent something from that particular company ever again, which is fine, but to be honest, if the first bit of kit that they sent me was crap, I don't really want the second.
Max has just bought some Ferro Concept QD swings levels and an M-Lock QD mount. Yeah, nice one, Max. well worth it. I've not really had any pressure, but I'm the same. I'm quite small. I've only got 4,500 subs. I do quite well, but I'm a small channel. I
think if you go chasing it and you want to be a brand ambassador for 3 different companies and you want to make it, something profitable, then people can be quite aggressive. But I think a lot of it is they just expect you, if you're that type of personality, that you're going to be positive anyway. And I'm sure it's potentially held me back in certain times, but I don't care. I really don't. I've seen people trying to chase that magical dragon and become an airsoft celebrity and do whatever, and it never works out. They end up leaving, and that's fine. I only do what I do because I enjoy it. I enjoy writing. I write what I want, and I write what I want about. Yeah,
I was on a podcast live stream with English Kiwi. English Kiwi did a really nice one on YouTubing in general, just about the pressures and the anxiety and the tension and how difficult it can be. And the conclusion we came to is there'll be 0.1% of people that can make a living out of this. And if you don't, if you don't enjoy what you do, just don't do it. It's just.
I've got to add on to the previous question as well. I completely forgot Bada Bing, and I'm sorry. Amazing video reviewer, very, very honest. He's one of the people that I bought something purely based upon his opinion. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have bought an MWS.
Yeah, ironically, I bought a GHK because of him.
Yeah, and considering it's now what I consider to be my primary go-to platform, I owe that guy quite a lot. And also, personally, he's helped me out as well. He helped me out with a 14.5-inch barrel when I wanted to change my CQBR into a full length. And he steered me in the direction of 6-gun smithing as well, who do a couple of really good little pieces for the MWS.
I spoke to him a lot when I was working out what GBR I wanted. And it was very open, and we had a really good discussion. And he let me use a lot of his footage for the video by choosing a GBR video. Great. I'll try and get him on. Actually, I think it'd be a really good conversation.
You definitely should. Yeah.
I think we'll be fine. I'll see if he's up for it. A lot of people don't like being on live. It's can be quite stressful.
He's done one live stream before. It was on another channel, and I think he kind of got forgotten about because the other people on it were too busy rabbiting onto each other, and he was just sat in the back there waiting for a question that never came, which is a shame. But yeah.
I'll do it like this. I'll do a double header where we can have a proper chat. Okay, any more questions, guys, before we disappear? Because we've both got blogs and videos to do, and I'm a bit disappointed the cat didn't come back, Dan. We had a cat on the pre-show.
I could go and get him.
I think we're all right. So there's no more. So I'll kind of keep the stream open for another couple of minutes. As if there's any more questions coming in. Jason asks, "Is that £100 worth of 5.56 link behind you?"
No, it's that much. I think it's 30 rounds, and it was part of a project. I'll tell you why. Because this magazine for the Mark 46, the magazine costs £100. Marui do not include this with a replacement magazine. You have to buy the link separately.
Yeah,
and guess how much the link costs?
It's
£100 for the 11 rounds of link. So my idea was, because I have a 3D printer, there's a little thing that you can print off. I bought a spare magazine, I printed off the little thing, and I attached it to another 11 rounds, and it works. So if anybody's got a spare magazine for a Mark 46 and wants dummy rounds and don't want to pay £100 for it, let me know, because I'll sell you this for £60.
Phil Bucknell also has a Mark 46. Yeah, we had a long discussion about the ridiculous price.
It's stupid, isn't it? Speak of the devil and he shall appear.
Oh, there he is. Thanks, mate. I'll be in touch. There are. Hello, look. Bada Bing is here. Cheers, fellas. More than happy to help. Keep doing what you do. Thank you very much, mate. I'll be in touch, actually. It'd be great to have you on the show at some point. I think, guys, I want to do a gas blowback part 2. My gas blowback part 1 video was really, really popular, so it'd be nice to get another guy on. So I think everyone, thank you very much for turning up. It's been really great. Obviously, a massive thanks to Dan from ATRG. Please go and hit up his blog and read his stuff. It's been brilliant. We had a really good conversation. Thanks for turning up as ever. Most